Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
I'm Mark Seifter. I am the director of game design at Roll for Combat, former Paizo design manager, one of the co-creators of Pathfinder's second edition.
I'm really glad we got a chance to talk again. I don't know if I probably said this to you 1,000 times already, but um, but I really enjoy the Dragon Ancestry book that you came out with some time ago. It is such a fantastic book. I'm very picky about dragon books nowadays. I always try and look for something new, something I haven't read or seen before, because I've been following the myth of dragons since D&D put out the first, was it Dragonomicon, back in the second edition days.
Oh, right,
Um,
yeah. They
so
had
yeah, so
um they had all sorts of things. Back then they had Council of Worms back in
yeah,
AD&D too.
yes. So yes, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about what's coming out new, that's coming out in Kickstarter very soon. Would you like to announce what it is?
Sure. So as of when this goes live, the Kickstarter should already be live as well, because the Kickstarter is coming out on July 18th, and that is World of Battlezoo Indigo Isles.
Hmm.
So those of you who have been paying attention to the Roll for Combat Battlezoo line may recognize the name Indigo Isles from the Jewel of the Indigo Isles adventure path. So World of Battlezoo Indigo Isles is a dedicated setting book for the Indigo Isles region that you might think of as akin to like Lost Omens Mwangi Expanse from
Hmm.
Paizo, except for it's on the Indigo Isles region, and which is an archipelago that is set nominally in the world of Alucard, which is the Battlezoo setting, but it's a set of islands. It takes up a very small geographical area. You can easily fit it in your own campaign setting or another campaign setting of your choice, anywhere that you would have a good place to put some islands, basically.
Hmm. Now, I'm dying to ask you questions about the some new dragon options you have in this book. But before we get to that, before that, let's talk about the setting. Because I'm always intrigued. As much as I love Galarian, and I think it's a fantastic setting. I'm always want to know about new things that we can use the Pathfinder system for. So this setting, what would you say makes this different from other settings in Galarian or in fantasy in general?
So even if you chose to set these islands somewhere in Golarion, which you probably could, with a few tweaks that you make using maybe the Golarion deities, or decide that the religions that are in the book are regional pantheons or something like that. But even if you did, you would quickly find that there's a big difference, which is what ancestries are common in the Indigo Isles. You're not going to find humans, elves, or dwarves hanging out here unless maybe they came from across the ocean. It's not that there aren't any in the entire planet, they're just really not on these islands. So there's a whole new set of ancestries. So there's 8 ancestries for the Indigo Isles that are new, either because they previously appeared in like the Indigo Isles character guide PDF only, sort of companion to the adventure path, or because they're brand new from this product, and 2 heritages for existing Paizo ancestries that are those ancestries are common. This would be the Wildfire Leshy for the Leshy ancestry, and the Galtzagori heritage for the Sprite ancestry, because Sprites and Leshies are the only ones that are, I wouldn't, they're not core rulebook, right? But they're that are like Paizo ancestries that you can really find in any number here. But there's also other ones which include your favorite dragons. In fact, the wild dragons, which are one of the families of dragons introduced in Battlezoo Ancestry Dragons, are particularly known for hanging around the Indigo Isles. I mean, one of them is the Indigo Dragon. Um, so that is heavily tied into the dragon options you were dying to ask about before. So the dragon options you'll find in here are the monster stat block versions of all those wild dragons, because, well, you didn't have them up until this point, right? You have like a creature stat block for a red dragon or a white dragon or gold dragon, but you don't have one for the indigo dragons that are like the monster version, not the one who did the ritual from Battlezoo Ancestry's dragons and sort of became a player character. So this is your first chance to have the GM using those five cool new dragons with stat blocks written by Paizo developer Jessica Catalan.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I'm a fan of her work as well. The setting. So anyone that's kind of new to what's happening, you haven't picked up the Jewel of the Nile books or anything like that. For anyone new, what is it about to say? Like, what are some of the elements that makes um, some of the like the antagonists? You know, like usually when I think of a setting when I want to play, like for example, I'll just pick Dragonlance randomly. I think of Takisses and her armies and coming in. What does Indigo Isle offer when it comes to antagonists?
So when it comes to Indigo Isles, there's a lot of open plot hooks. There's many different biomes across the islands. Even the one largest island, Gold Crop Island, has like salt desert next to a jungle, giant mountains, river area with pirates, and kind of a haunted hills area that has a giant sprawling city built by a dragon architect who emptied out his hoard to build a giant city, but nobody moved there. And he spent all his money getting aqueducts to try to get water to there. Killed off some of the architects he had hired, or the I guess laborers to build it. I mean, he didn't kill them, but they just died because of trying to build this giant city, and it's just out there. So there's lots of plot hooks, strange things that are going on in the mists or deep in the waters, and like the hints that are left behind of a forgotten history that has possibly even been intentionally hidden by someone who revised it for whatever reason. That there are all sorts of secrets and dangers, let alone the haunted Moon Shadow Island that everyone says don't go there because you're going to just never survive if you return. And there may be echoes of ancient kaiju who once roamed the lands and were driven away by the dragon deity Talir in ancient times, but not all of them may have died. Perhaps there's one that's hidden somewhere that you might be able to find with your party. So there's a lot of like mystery and hidden threats, but also a lot of sort of colorful, outrageous adventures in the style of Guardians of the Galaxy meets Indiana Jones. So it sort of has a lot of different feels to it. And by virtue of having dragons and sprites and leshies, and there's parrot people that live there, and people made entirely out of rock called Kragraks. And so it feels very fresh, and it doesn't feel like your typical dwarves and elves location.
Oh, that's awesome. The setting books that Paizo puts out are spectacular books. They're
They're
the
awesome.
Absalom, One Gig Expanse, the Impossible Lands. All of them are incredibly detailed. Wow, I don't know how to explain the amount of detail, amount of information you get from their books. So, when with this book coming out, for anyone that's familiar with that already, should we expect that type of level of like design when it comes to descriptions of the places you'll go, the tons of adventure hooks, things like that?
I would expect a lot of adventure hooks. In terms of Absalom, like that book is just enormous. It's bigger than any other Paizo book. But this one's probably going to be a little bit more like a little bit shorter Mwangi Expanse. And compared to Mwangi Expanse, it'll have more rules elements that can tie players and GMs into the setting by virtue of having all those dragons. That takes up some space. The new ancestries, that's a lot of space on their own as well. So there's also special familiars that were written by Linda Zayas Palmer that include both cute and weird familiars that live in the islands that you can team up with. New pirate archetype feats for if you're taking the pirate archetype, but you'd like to do some interesting things. Like there's a skill feat called The Dead Tell No Tales, where basically you use your intimidation DC as a second DC to determine how much people can gather information from settlements that you're in that you don't want to get out. They have to beat the normal DC and your intimidation DC. If they beat the normal DC but not the intimidation, then they realize that some people know something, but they're too afraid to say because you're just keeping that information out. And there's also combat-oriented pirate feats too. Lots of options for the ancestries. They're like longer in general than you would see from typical Paizo ancestry. But like you said, tons of plot hooks, detailed information about settlements. And not only are the settlements in general give you a pretty robust amount of information, but the two biggest settlements, or the biggest settlements on each of the two largest islands, which are Rumplank on the island of Goldcrop and Seaview on Bluebell Island, have large gazetteers, which we have actually presented one of them for free in a free download already because it's very relevant to the adventure path since you start in that city. They're written in character by NPCs that you could even find in the adventure or meet there. Like one of them is a sort of known character who's from the city of Rumplank where you start, and the sort of gazetteer that's written about Seaview is written by one of the counselors who's on the council, and she has a very quirky perspective on things and is constantly trying to make sure that her constituents don't vote her out. And it's like, my constituents are the best, don't vote me out. While she is like sort of describing things that are going on. So there's a lot of information about settlements, about areas that don't have settlements, like confusing poison fields or like misty crevices in the earth that no one knows what are inside of those. And so there's a lot that you can do across the islands with information that was written by the big cities were actually Ron Lundeen and Patrick Rini, former Paizo development manager and senior developer who now at Wizards of the Coast. And a lot of the other settlements, I wrote one, but many of the other ones between the settlements and the island were written by Brady Wang from, you may know from Gallant Goblin and Queer Finder, who's also a Paizo freelancer, and Paul Hughes, who did a lot of writing for Level Up for Ian World, did a lot of like the core monster math for that. So there's a lot of interesting details for GMs who love setting, for players and GMs who like something that is a character option that can tie them in. Because we did a survey. We asked, when it comes to setting books, like what are you looking for in a setting book? And then we like took a look at those results. We figured out where there's some results that were like not from someone who was really talking about a setting book, and looking at the rest of them, we found exactly what people wanted in a setting book. And it turned out Ancestries was pretty high up on the list to like make you feel like you're in the setting. They didn't pick all the rules things first, like you might have thought. They were like, nah, spells and magic items that we maybe don't need to really carry the setting book. Not that they didn't like them, just they weren't as important. But Ancestries felt like you're really in a different place, they said. So we made sure to include a lot of those, a lot of plot hooks and lore for players and GMs. And that includes gazetteers that are spoiler free in certain sections that are written for players to see. We learned our lesson from just Stephen and I have read a lot of them that don't always match that. I think infamously, when the Eberron campaign setting came out for 3rd edition D&D, is a great campaign setting, but they had some problems with that where they would just have like a section that was very player focused. It was like the rules of Warforged, one of the new races, and then like the next page it would be like, secretly this one guy and nobody knows is a vampire and he leads one of the countries, and it's like, why was that placed next to that? And so we made sure to have sections that it's like, it's not going to reveal people's alignments or levels to be like, it's not going to be like, this person is secretly a level 19 devil. It'll just be like what the people in the settlement know, so that your players can enjoy it without spoiling things.
Hmm. I know Battlezoo has put out a lot of other books besides Jewel of the Nile, Elderman. I know the Year of Monsters also has been worked on. Of those books, how are they? Are they also tied in um, to the new book coming out? And how are they tied together?
Yeah, so there's little ties and nods together between all of the books and ways that they synergize together. Maybe kind of like some of the movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that aren't like the big ones where you have to have watched everything, but just kind of how there's little nods and connections. I don't think you need to have any of the other books to really get something out of World of Battles of Indigo Isles, but if you do, you'll notice, oh hey, I know about the wild dragons because I read these articles written by Calazandrex, the Green Dragon, about the wild dragons when I had Battles of Ancestry Dragons, and I have my player character rules for them, and now I have the monsters rules for them. Or if you have Jewel for the Indigo Isles, they'll be like, oh yeah, I went to that place that we had to go to that dangerous area that it mentioned there, and oh, these are some of the possible history of that area, that as told by a traveling guide who may or may not be accurate and has multiple different theories about things. So there's definitely connections. Also, when it comes to Eldamon, well, Eldamon exists, so they're mentioned in the setting, and there's a religion called the Eld, which is tied to Eldamon. So for those listening, Eldamon are these sort of nature spirit beings that represent one of the 20 elements in the world of Battlezoo. And the religion, the Eld, worships those 20 elements. Not really as a god, and it's a very sort of like uncaring elements that it makes it not the most popular religion, because when people are like, well, the other religions are telling us if we worship them they'll give us miracles, if we don't they will damn us to hell. But what do you think? What is do you want us to worship you? What will you do? And the Eld priests are like, we won't give you anything, it's all based on what you get out of it from your own meditation. And so there's one of the settlements in the world about Indigo Isles that I wrote is Crest, which is on the near the top of a volcano. There was a small monastery of these rock people, Cragracks, that they built it to worship the Eld, maybe watch over the volcano and stop it from erupting, and just be on their own. And other people came and were like trying to start a settlement, and the monks like kind of didn't want them to be there, but they also it was not enough to like drive them away. And everyone thought the monks were pretty great. So they kind of just moved in, and when they had disputes, they asked the monks to solve the disputes, and the monks were like, okay. And so they kind of built this settlement that is very tied to the Eld, and those particular monks believe that like having Eldamon battles is a crass way to use the spirits of the Eld for like public cheap thrills. Even though some worshippers of the Eld like to do those kind of battles because it shows off the elemental spirits. And so there's like secret cave outside of town where people sometimes go to engage in Eldamon battles, and so that's included in reference there. So each of the different works that is in the Battlezoo line has their pieces to plan their connections. But if you don't have Eldamon, that like you don't need the book to know that there's like a little bit of a side area where you can go. The food is good. Some people come to that place just because like the spouse of the person running it is really good at cooking, and they probably could have just made an inn instead of an illegal or quasi-legal Eldamon battle area. But hey, it's a popular venue.
I know you share some stuff already when it comes to ancestries and heritages that are available. Are there other player options that you want to share? Are there any like maybe also like new equipment or magic or anything like that?
So based on what we asked people, we found that mostly having a lot of spells and magic items were lower on their priority list to get like the feeling of being in the setting. I think there's like a few. There's like maybe like a Galtagori hook spear that's like a weapon for Galtagoris, and there might be like I think there's a new like a jag blade that is used by hardrigans, which are a type of ram people that are very interesting because of their strange social structures that are based upon pillars formed of strength, where like someone who's strong like heads up a pillar of hardrigans, and it's it's an interesting and different social structure that you might be used to, and they've got their own weapon. Like a lot of the ancestries have social structures that you might not expect. Chochuri are people made of coral. They like coral itself. Like Chochuri don't really have gender, and they have these 7 things called chora. They're not really even anything like gender, but some like people who are from humanoid ancestries that have gender are always trying to equate it to something, or like maybe it's kind of like gender. So you're like, what are you doing? Why is everything about that with you? You're all so weird. It's just and then they try to classify everyone based on what chora you're in, which of their 7 chore. So they're like, oh well, that one looked like they might be from the Icris Chora, and then nobody understands, and it's difficult for them to conjugate in Chochore because it matters what Chora someone is, how you conjugate things, and it causes some linguistic difficulties unless you can figure out what Chora they're likely to label you with, which generally depends on your personality more so than any kind of physical traits.
Hmm. So this will be on Kickstarter, hopefully around the same time this video is released. Um, what are your plans for it exactly? Any particular stretch goals or anything like that?
So we've decided that after the last Kickstarter, we wanted to make one that was simple to pledge to without having to look through like a ton of different combinations of things, and simple to fulfill so that we can fulfill it quickly after, like once everyone pledges, once they get through billing and get all of that sorted out, that it'll be basically almost done for the PDF. And so in order to do that, we're not going to put in like gigantic stretch goals that add hundreds of pages to this book, but we wanted stretch goals that were cool and that would add value. And we wanted to do something that's different that, as far as I know, very few people have done. So what we did, it's got simple tiers where you can get like the PDF or Ad Foundry, or get the hardcover Ad Foundry, or get the special edition hardcover Ad Foundry. There's one more like high tier that's limited, and that's it. But even if you only get the PDF at the lowest tier, everybody who pledges is getting a chance to join us among the authors who are coming up with ideas for this book, because we have the main islands and they have whole sections. There's another section at the end that's like other islands, and we'll have a few other islands that are in there. But if you even pledge for the PDF, you are able to submit an idea, just like a pitch, elevator pitch for your own island, and we will take the best ones, and I will write a like 200-word island entry in the other island section for your island, and we will credit you for coming up with the idea for that island, and you'll join us in the people who made the island. So a lot of Kickstarters will have a higher goal, where it's like this very high tier allows you to create something that's in the product. And that is what our one high tier is a guaranteed island that a few people have. But something I haven't really seen is just like everybody can submit one, not just the people at the highest tiers. We'll go through all of them, and we'll find some that are really awesome. And based on stretch goals, that unlocks more slots for winners of the best island idea contest, which will also lengthen the book with more and more islands that we put in. And so basically, as we keep stretching up, that's not like literally everything that's in there, but that is like a significant number of them is expanding the book by adding more winter islands created by backers. So we want that at Battlezoo, at Roll for Combat, we want to see backers and fans and readers become engaged and become part of the process. That's why for Year of Monsters, we have special design streams where whenever we're expanding, like we got a stretch goal last time to double the length of our demons. Demons are the one we just released for July. And So I wrote like half that extra content already, but I left the other half intentionally blank because at the end of the month, we're going to ask everybody who backed on the Kickstarter and like, what would you like to see with that extra word count? What's missing? What demons are your favorites that aren't in here now? And then we'll add based on what people want. So we want to engage and have people join our design team and be part of the process.
Hmm. I just wanted to clarify something. I know your previous Battlezoo books, you had options for, you could tell I leaned heavily toward Pathfinder, but you also had options for fifth edition players as well.
Mm-hmm.
Will this this new project, also incorporate fifth edition
That's right.
conversion?
Yes, we'll have a Pathfinder second edition and a fifth edition version for this one. So for the rules parts. Now this one also has a good amount of lore that's gonna carry you well in either system, but all of the rules is gonna be converted into fifth edition. So you will have it for both games, whichever one you'd like to play. If you like to play something else, you can still use like most of what's in there. Maybe not like I'd say the lengthiest part that you wouldn't be able to use is the ancestry rulesy parts, but there's a lot of lore on the ancestries too that could still be really good for you.
Hmm. And something you sort of mentioned, and I kind of want to highlight this to our viewers because I don't think it's, at least when I watch some other videos, it's not highlighted enough. You also put out products that people that are into virtual tabletops can use as well. Your Dragon book, and well, actually, some of your other books previously, there's Foundry versions as well. Could you talk a little bit about those
Yeah,
options?
we get like the same some of the same people who code Pathfinder 2e things for Foundry. So for Jules Indigo Island is one of the same people who does the Paizo adventure paths on there for the premium modules. And yeah, absolutely. That's why we're making the tiers pretty simple this time, but they do include a Foundry at each particular level. So it's like PDF plus Foundry, hardcover plus Foundry, and the deluxe special edition hardcover and that plus Foundry. And we found that many of our users and our backers like Foundry. And in the first Kickstarter, a ton of people use Foundry. In the second, we tried to offer like a bundled, very discounted Year of Monsters that always included Foundry, and we found there were enough people that didn't use Foundry that were like, oh well, I don't want to get both of them. So this time we're always going to make it yes or no with Foundry, but we know there's a lot of our backers that use it. And if you don't and you're one of our backers, that's cool too. Like there's some situations with I think fantasy grounds where like somebody else has to decide to do your content to get it on there. So and Roll20 has similar things, but like Steven is always open to get it on there too if those are the ones that you use. Sometimes our things get on there. With Foundry, you kind of like work with the people to get it done yourself, so you can be more sure that it's going to be out there, and then you can include it in the Kickstarter more easily than with those other two, which is why you'll see it in there more often. If you don't use virtual tabletops, then that's cool too. I usually do Theater of the Mind, and I think
Hmm.
you're great whether you use virtual tabletops or not.
um, if I may ask, are there any storylines, adventure hooks, anything particular that you have like any personal favorites when it comes to those in this book so far? Any?
Hmm. So there's definitely some intriguing hooks. Like I mentioned before about like the haunted city that was supposed to be a city, and there's a few people that are just squatting there because all these vacant houses, and you can just get a mansion or something if you just go there, but it's very dangerous. So that one's pretty cool. The haunted island is definitely fun. Um, there's there's also like the question of why there is a salt desert that just like suddenly you're in a jungle and there's almost no transition between the two of them. That there's several theories about one or the other of those two being caused by magic, and even the narrator is not sure which one is which, but kind of prefers a particular option that's based on an old legend of a Hardrigan who attempted to stop the desertification by like bringing in a lot of water elemental energy and transformed into like a part Eldamon version of himself that haunts the jungle or something like that. So there's definitely a lot of there's hooks there that are fun. There's also a poisonous area that is like weirdly almost has its own will to like expand and cross one of the islands, and there's like wardens who are like stopping it from getting any farther than it actually is, and a strange mist that has like a sort of a sect of worshippers who believe that like going into the mists in this one other part of the island is will lead to paradise, whereas others are like monsters are in there and they will eat you, and that's pretty clear. So there's a lot that could happen in sort of any of these settlements, and of course the adventure path itself takes place there and has its own hook, which is a missing pirate treasure map from the legendary pirate who founded the largest city on the island. It suddenly resurfaces, leading to some of the mysteries from the past and the history of the island that had been intentionally hidden from the present.
And speaking of artwork, anyone that's familiar with the Battlezoo books already, would you say the art style is sort of similar to the previous Battlezoo books?
I would say yes. There's obviously a lot of different artists that are around. So and depending on who is doing what. So like for instance, Firat Solhan, who has done things for Paizo before, did all the dragons in the Dragon book and did the Eldamon for the Eldamon book, but did not do like the art in this book. But then again, neither did he do the art for the Indigo Isles, Jewel of the Indigo Isles, Adventure Path, or kind of some of the other books. He does a lot of backgrounds, or sorry, borders, like sort of the edge treatments. And he did for Paizo as well, including like Guns and Gears and some of those other ones. So actually, he did like I think he did like some art for like the new Harrow set that they did with Stolen Fate too for Paizo. So that's a pretty big deal to get a Harrow. Like very few artists have a chance to do a full Harrow set.
Hmm. All right, excellent, excellent. Is there any last word, anything you want to say before we wrap up the interview?
Well, I think if I could say anything, it's go to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com and check out the Kickstarter. Just take a look at it. Simpler. If you looked at the other ones, are like, oh, there's so much information. This one's simple and easy to look at. Take a look. Back it if you're interested. We always appreciate that. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm going to be having a Reddit AMA to talk about this, but also about some other related topics that people can ask about. And I'll be around, so keep in touch.
Hmm. Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your new Kickstarter project and Battlezoo book. I'm very excited. I've been very impressed with the quality of work that's been coming out from this company. Um, and my players also feel the same way. So yes, thank you for your time and viewers. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. I'll put all the links in the description below, and stay safe out there. Take care.